Of all things, I'm a leftist, and nothing will ever change that. Because despite my love for individual freedoms and for the value of the singular person, I will always hope and fight for something bigger than us, a community where everybody can benefit from that freedom. I will always believe on possibilities more than rights that only work on paper. That is why I understand what some of the liberals say, but I'm never going to be a liberal myself. Inside me, I hope it will never die the struggle for the common good, instead of the fight for singular interests and lobbies. Even if this is how modern society works, by dividing the populace and deciding how much freedom assigned to every group. I don't see that differentiation, because I'm a leftist. I see all human beings as equal, as all free at the same level. But that doesn't mean I don't recognize the peculiar values of our personality. I just don't believe that the system in which to use them is our capitalistic society. I don't see much freedom there. For most of you, this is not left though. It's something different altogether. For two reasons mainly. First of all, because there is no structure, or party, or even corporation, for what matters, that really represents and helps spreading that idea of freedom which I told you about. This is something very funny from my point of view, because when people call me a communist, they also tell me that they know it's full of people like me, even in those higher places of power. I found that funny, because I instead don't see many people like me. I see the world going in a completely different direction. Starting with those same people that are so scared of communism because they are taught it's the end of every freedom. And so they vote for politicians that actually use that fear to grant themselves even more power, stealing it from their voters. This is the second reason. You think left is bad because you are told it is. Because the original way of the left died many years ago. It was that politics that wanted to be closer to the masses and help them get better conditions. It was this idea of equality and equity, now replaced with liberalism, that the left adopted, that creates an even greater gap between the mass and the people with the most money, thanks also to our economical system. Another funny thing is how, when capitalism goes wrong, it's the government's fault. When it goes right, and the middle class is born, it's shown to be the perfect environment for enrichment. The problem is that the rules of liberalism don't work this way. The most common non-intervention method of liberalism is in fact the absence of taxation to those that have more money, so that it's the rich people that will be able to distribute wealth into the community. So democratic institutions, such as some countries, end up having less resources to create services to be used by citizens. And because we are still ruled by liberals, when people don't have their nation to help them, they either become criminals or they go to those same companies that created those conditions. This way, singular individuals rich enough get the same power that a democratic government should have. And what on paper looks like a country of freedom, because in theory everyone has the same rights, in reality it becomes an oligarchy, where a restricted group of people has all the resources to have power over those that don't have any. In fact, liberalism tends to centralize and save wealth, whereas social reforms that tends to distribute them. So actually, it wasn't capitalism that created the middle class, it was socialism, or to be precise, it was the social politics, it was the idea of the community done in time of capitalism. As I always say, if you help the community, you end up helping everybody. If you try to have stronger individuals, the community loses. And so everybody loses. The majority of people ends up with less possibility, less rights, and less wealth. You might say that even if socialism distributed wealth, it was capitalism that created it. But actually, just like in physics, nothing comes from anything and then disappears. This is why every economical system works, taking something from other places. If it would be done with a moral sense in mind, you would give what you have, an abundance of, to parties that have less, and take back what you need and the others can give you. But in reality, it doesn't work like that, now also because of finance, that requires that arrow to always point up, and you can understand it can't happen to all of us. Otherwise, we would be creating resources, and that is impossible. This is why, even when the system seems to work, Western economies would steal resources from places where the locals are not strong enough to defend themselves. So we have all the new colonialism, or the use of slave-like working force. This is why even the little wealth we created in our society actually produces more poverty or despair in the countries we steal from. Eventually, what Western society have done will come back to hit us. I am not talking about your Mexican restaurant on the corner that shadows your favorite fast food. I am talking about migration in the order of many millions. I am talking about war for space, actual war, not your African American actor in your everyday comedy. This is what our modern and so-called society of freedoms looks like. It's the law of the jungle, the law of the strongest, which in our world means who has the most amount of money. But what is the survival of the fittest for unusual thinker? I would say it's anarchy, a dystopian world where everybody is on its own. But isn't that the world we live in today? So either we live in a world governed by anarchy, and in some cases I would agree, or anarchy is a different thing than what we are told. It's the second. Anarchy is the system where there is no higher structure, no government. That is correct. But not so that we are able and justified to commit the worst crimes, so that we can achieve the full potential of our freedoms, so that no one has the power to overcome the others. In fact, what I think is the beauty of anarchy doesn't end here. In this utopia, there is no government, not because we want to go against our peers, because we don't need one. Because as humanity, we have reached that consciousness of the common good, the awareness of who we are, that we don't need anyone to tell us what is good and what is wrong. Think of it as a parent-child relation. In this stage of humanity, we are children. We leave our rights to higher institutions, and we don't really care what they do with our freedom. We didn't give it to them. We gave up our freedoms. This is why to reach what is an utopia, what could be impossible, we need to have democracy. In fact, going back to what I said previously, we don't live in a democracy, we live in an oligarchy. Some of us more, some less. And democracy, it's not pure liberalism, because as we discussed, it eventually leads to the opposite of the original goal. But it's not socialism, or Stalinism, or even communism, where you eventually eliminate all the discussion, or the debate, and so you forget what is the common good that you originally wanted to achieve. Probably it's both liberalism and communism to be the most utopia-like because of their strict rules and proceedings that eventually go against your original plans when the conditions change, as they always do. What democracy should be is the constant participation of all its members, starting from the local to the general, trying to avoid delegating your rights and doing your individual best to make the difference. Some say that a chain is strong has its weakest link. I say a democracy is strong has the sum of its members, willing to fight and never give up the struggle to create the best environment for everybody, and not for his or her own interests. I am Gabriel, and this is my view of anarchy. This is what I consider democracy. This is freedom. This is Freequality.